going on, everybody? James Corbett here, Project Refit. Yes, I'm inside of the mobile base currently. Some of you know that because you've been popping in the streams throughout the day. Right now, we're driving to Louisiana to go help out Officer Rose. We're going down there to rebuild the roof for her. We put together a team of people and some special forces guys and construction guys out in Louisiana to go down there and rebuild her roof after some string of troubles that she was going through. We're going to be camping out in her front yard for 3 days, 4 days technically, and then heading home back by Tuesday. But today we have with us Pritchett, who will be going over some leadership. We'll be going through his story, and we're going to be hearing potentially some really good insight, and I'm sure that he will offer it, whether or not I'm putting him up for a big spotlight. I'm sorry about that, sir, but that's kind of like what we do. We believe in you. But yeah, so with that said, if you could go ahead and take it away and introduce yourself, that'd be great.
All right, hey guys. Some of you know me, some of you don't. Hey, I'm JD Pritchett. I'm the former commander of the 6th Ranger Training Battalion down here, the Florida phase of Ranger School. That's the last thing I just got done doing, and I'm transitioning over to be the professor of military science over at the University of West Florida. So I like this area so much that I decided to stay for another year or so. Been in the Army for going on 20 years, still on active duty. How I was brought into this group was some of my guys wanted me to come talk about some things, some life, some leadership things that I've done and seen over the last 20 years. A career that spans from Louisiana, as a matter of fact, all the way down here to Florida again after those 20 years, going on 21 years now. What started in, and I know we're going to talk about some things, but the first thing I want to talk about is kind of how I came to be in the Army. It's kind of funny. Was not the smartest person in the world, so I went to college and majored in pre-med. And what's funny is my dad was a retired Air Force E8, and his second life was being a college professor. So I decided to go to the college that he was teaching at. That's where I got my commissioning from. But I went in there, and after the first year, my dad was like, "Hey, you're not going to be a doctor." And there's the Army recruiter right down the hall. So you might want to go talk to him because you're not going to be in the medical profession making C's and D's in college. So I was like, all right, well, let me go talk to him real quick. So I walked down there and really, I talked to that guy, and I've actually remained friends with him since that moment. The ROTC guy by the name of Captain Mike Udy. But and that's how it started. And then, I wanted to be a pilot. So I went through and took the test or whatever you got to do to be a rotary wing pilot in the Army. And I got to the camp that you have to go through as cadets, and the guy was like, "Hey, your eyesight sucks." So I was like, "All right, I guess I'm going to go be a infantry. I'm going to go be a ranger." Right there, that's how it happened. That's how it happened. And from there, I went to Fort Drum. Went to obviously the basic course at Fort Benning, and then went to Fort Drum. Did a lieutenant time there before going to the 1st Ranger Battalion at Savannah, Georgia. And then spent 3 years in Savannah at the 175, and then went, obviously, to the Captain's Career Course, then went on to Alaska. And the reason I got to Alaska is the incoming brigade commander at the time was a guy by the name of Rich Clark. If you know who Rich Clark is, or you may not, but he is the SOCOM commander. He's a 4-star general right now. But he got accepted to be the Ranger Regiment commander. So he didn't end up going to Alaska, but the guys that he recruited to go to Alaska to follow him still went there. And that was probably the best decision of my career. It was also the best and probably the worst, and we can get into that here in a second. But I went up and spent 3 years up in Alaska, 2 years really as the commander of Alpha Company 115 Infantry, and then went from there, went on a deployment, came back from the deployment, and then went back to the 75th Ranger Regiment at Fort Benning, Georgia, before going to the majors course and everything. Spent some time in the USASOC, United States Army Special Operations Command, for about a year, and then went into the 82nd Airborne, and then from there spent some time in JRTC in Fort Polk. So came back to Fort Polk and Spent 4 years at Fort Polk before getting command down here in Florida. Spent the last 2 years here, and then I'll spend the next however long here in doing the ROTC thing, teaching college kids. So that's really the career in a nutshell. But I say, the best and worst decision was going to Alaska, because the best decision was going there, and probably the worst decision was leaving to go back to the 75th. Although it kind of worked out, you get you make your career what you make out of it. But I did have to leave early to pursue more future things in the Ranger Regiment for that. So I've been in the Ranger Regiment for 6 years, been in airborne units for about 14 of 20 years. Have a lot of jumps, a lot of deployments, got eight deployments under me, 5 to Afghanistan, 3 to Iraq. So there's plenty of stories on those things to go around. But one of the things that, I kind of want to talk about, when we talk, philosophies, one of the first things I tell people is, everybody's going through shit. Everybody goes through shit, no matter what your rank is, no matter what your job is. When people ask me, well, how do you deal with things? How do you look at things? Well, ain't nobody's life perfect, and mine's certainly not perfect. When you talk I've had a lot of career highlights and a lot of things like that, but I've also, dealt with the loss of a sister, the loss of a father. Hell, what most don't know is 2 years ago I went through a divorce 2 years ago. Most people don't know that because I kept that hidden after 15 years of marriage. Went through a divorce, and that's one of the things we'll probably talk about when we talk about how kind of work through those things, and kind of the leadership philosophies. But and then how do you take care of yourself, your people, and your family? But the first thing is, again, nobody's alone. Nobody's going through anything, that nobody hasn't done before. I think that's something to remember when we talk, for my life and things like that. Is first thing you got to accept is that ain't nobody's life perfect, and that the sun rises every day. It rises every day. That's something that I had to tell myself going through some things, questioning, hell, I question, why things happen to my family, why things happen to me. But it kind of goes back to time doesn't stop. Time doesn't stand still. That's something I've learned over 20 years, is that everything keeps moving. And the faster you accept that, the faster you can get over things, and the faster you can move on to the next thing. Been a lot of places, done a lot of things. But when you talk, one of the things you wanted me to talk about was some of those things that I just talked about. But leadership, you asked me to talk about, my leadership philosophy, and I've never had really time to focus on, me personally, but that's one thing you do have to focus on. But it's all about the people, that's kind of what got me through. That's what kind of got me through my career. It's what's kind of drives me, is the people, taking care of people. And I think that, when you look at, the guys that are on this phone call that were with me in Alaska, that have kind of, been there through some significant things, it's all about the people to your left and to your right. One of the most significant things, that leadership challenges that I've ever had, was this past year. You may have heard about it, you may not have heard about it, but we lost a Ranger student in the Florida phase of Ranger School. First time we've lost a Ranger student in the actual phase since 1995, and I was the commander when that happened. And I can still remember that night, that vivid night. I was on the ground, I was in the water. I was the guy that actually pulled him out of the water after we did a search, jumping in on the rope and pulling him out, and he was still attached. There's all kinds of things. But being there at that moment seeing, and then you have this shock, right? And I'm calling on the radio, and the first thing I had to do was had to get on the radio after we got him evacuated. And he got to the hospital, and then I had to turn my focus to the men, not just the students, but the Ranger instructors, so that they could hear my voice come over the radio very calmly and say, hey, we have a job to do. Everybody knows what happened. Everybody was monitoring the net. But hey, we're here. First thing, and then I had to give a list of priorities and a list of tasks to do for each instructor to kind of get them refocused on getting the job done, so they're not showing panic over the radio. So every year we go back through the 1995 incident. It's called the Crane Lake Tactical Exercise Without Troops. And we walk through the incidents of 1995, of when those 4 students drowned due to hypothermia. And we kind of relive. So one of the reasons those students died in 1995 is because the RIs panicked, and they didn't have the ear mics, so they're coming over the radio, screaming, shouting. And the students then, what are the students doing if the instructors are panicking? The students are going to panic. And so that going through that was the first thing that I remember of those. And by this point, I'd already done it, I guess, twice in my 2 years of command. I'd already done that, rehearsal, that revisit of that exercise of that incident. But that was the first thing I realized was, hey, I've got to, as the commander, remain calm. Even though I was literally hands-on with that soldier, pulling them out, putting them on the boat. But I had to then transition to being a leader. Had to transition to remaining calm, just like in a firefight, just like when rounds are coming at you. The leadership has to remain calm, because that's what everybody's watching. All eyes are on you. And that was a significant event, because when you get back after the radio calls, after getting back, then you got to deal with 1-star, 2-star, 3-star generals trying to call you. You got the CID investigation. You got the safety investigation, all of them swarming on you that night. But you still have 4 platoons worth of students out in the swamp. You got all your instructors, except for minus 1 platoon, still out in the swamp, and they're looking at you for direction, guidance, and to set the example. And you talk about a leadership challenge. You talk about, when you say leading from the front, setting the example, leading the way, tenets of the Ranger Creed, not leaving a fallen soldier to fall in the hands of the enemy, all those different things, that was all in one night. That was all that one night over these last, when you can sum up 20 years of training, 20 years of getting ready for that one moment, and then telling the RIs, those NCOs, I told them that night, because I watched it. I watched them risking their lives, because they don't carry life jackets. Some of them don't carry life jackets. So to watch RIs jump in the water to try to save a student, we're not combat lifesavers. We're not there. One of the hardest things to do, they'll tell you in dive school, in the Navy dive schools that people go to, is the hardest thing to do is save a drowning, panicking person that's flailing, kicking, that you're not trained for. And so to see RIs, Ranger instructors, jumping in the water trying to save a student, I told him that night. And then the next day when we brought him in, I was like, hey, I watched it. I got your back. Took off my rank, put it on the table, and said, hey, they'll have to come after me first. And that was, I can get worked up about it, just thinking about that night, because it took, a lot. We brought the students in the next day to try to talk to them and see how they were doing. And, a lot of them, a couple of them were, blaming us for not doing it. I mean, you got a couple of second lieutenants that hadn't been in the Army for 30 seconds saying you guys should have done more, that doesn't see all the boats coming and the helicopters coming. And, within 26 minutes, we were in the middle of the swamp. We had evacuated him. He had been in the hospital. He was getting life-saving measures from, the moment he was put in the boat to the moment he was, at the hospital. They don't see those things. They don't see the backside support. All they see is, what's in their mind. But for somebody to say, hey, you guys didn't do enough, you let him die. I wanted to punch that second lieutenant in the face. But obviously couldn't as the commander. But you want to talk about leadership? That to me was, the epitome of leadership. And we had, some of these guys will know ski, and we had hit IEDs, we had hit all those kind of things in Iraq back in 2007, 2008. But to be on the ground, that was kind of the closest thing. I hadn't deployed since 2015 for Inherent Resolve. So this was probably the most traumatic event that I had seen probably in a while. But when you talk leadership philosophy, that night kind of sums up, me, what I'm kind of about, and what I expect of especially the leaders that serve under me and with me, is that leadership by example, because you're the first line of defense. You're the first line. Everything kind of weighs on you. It's just like I told those students that were angry. I was like, hey, you can be angry, you can be whatever, all your blame that you want to blame, because you got to blame somebody. When those things happen, people want to blame somebody. There's always somebody to blame. And I looked at them and I said, hey, you want to blame somebody, you blame me. That's as the commander. And again, this was a traumatic event. Again, we hadn't lost a student in Ranger School since, at least in the Florida phase, since 1995. And to be in charge of the last one, on February 16th of, 2021, that was a significant event. But that kind of sums up what I expect out of leaders, leading from the front, setting the example. I could care less if you're a 300 PT score, as long as you're setting the example by doing the PT, by getting out there, by doing, you're at the range, you're in the field, you're getting dirty, but you're also setting the example for how to act. You're setting the example for how to, lead yourself both on duty and off duty, personally and professionally, I like to say. But those things kind of go into it. But then the last thing, when we talk, leadership, and I'll kind of open it up here in a second, taking care of yourself, your people, and your family. People say a lot of things about balance. You hear a lot of people talk about the word balance. I hate the word balance. I absolutely hate it. There is no such thing as balance. And I've sat in a lot of briefings. I've sat in a lot of, people talk and flap their gums and all this kind of 3 and 4 star generals. And let me tell you, and they talk about, you got to have balance. There is no such thing as balance. You know how they got to that position? They didn't have balance. They sacrificed their personal life, they sacrificed their family, they sacrificed their kids, all to chase the rabbit. And anybody that tells you different is lying to your face. So that's what I hate about balance. But you got to find some medium ground to where you can, look at your family, because it's all internal to you. Everything is internal to you and what you make priorities with. How you prioritize your family and how you prioritize your job, because that's where you find that middle ground. It's up to you to figure that out. But there's no 50-50. There's no sweet spot of, well, I'm going to do half family, half work, half personal, take care of me and my emotional side of it, and to be also achieve the thing. That's up to you of how to figure that out. One of the things that, when I had a kid, I was my daughter, she's going on 7 years old now. When I was that guy, and the guys that can tell you in Alaska, I was at the office Monday through Saturday every day. Saturdays, I would come in, I would do training calendars. I would go out and play football. And then I would go to the gym on Saturdays. And that's how I remained present in the barracks on the weekends. But I did that every day for 12 years. And then I had a kid. And then I couldn't stay at the office, and they expect us to stay, especially if you've been in a battalion where you have an S3 or an executive officer or whatever. Those are the guys that feel like they got to work until the lights shut off and the battalion, the brigade commander, they leave. And they don't understand that, I was the same way. Like, hey, it's the hours that you work. It's the being looked at as if you're the last one there. And you're working harder than everybody else. And once I had a kid, I immediately shifted to, okay, I'm leaving at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock to be home for supper. Because one of the greatest things that now General Clark, who I referenced earlier, told to me when he was the commander of 175, said, hey, JD, the kids are never going to see you in the morning. The kids are never going to be there. You're never going to see them off to breakfast because you got to go in for PT. You're going to leave for the office at 4, 4:30, 5 o'clock. So you're there. But they're going to see you. They're going to notice you not being home for supper. That was the most profound thing I'd probably ever heard up to that point. And so I took that and said, hey, when I have a kid, and it took 8 years of trying to have a kid, you talk about persistence and everything else, every medical treatment that's out there to get pregnant, things like that. But that's what I took notice of, and that's when I changed of going from, hey, I got to punch the clock. And my bosses noticed that, hey, I prioritized the family at that point. I was still coming in at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. But if I didn't have to be at the office, if there wasn't a field training exercise, if there wasn't a jump, if it was 5 o'clock, I was leaving. And my captains and the NCOs and the operations shop kind of noticed that, and I set the example for them leaving. So they didn't feel like, well, the boss is still here, so I got to be here. And they kind of noticed that of like, hey, you get your shit done, you go home. And if it's not done, guess what you can do? You can come in earlier in the morning when ain't nobody going to notice and you knock it out because let me tell you, I ain't going to be on the computer at 8 o'clock at night. I'm going to be bathing the kid. I'm going to be, eating supper. I'm going to be talking to the lady, and the spouse. And I kind of, setting the example for others to follow. And that, again, goes back to tying that back into the leadership philosophy. And when you talk about your people, that's taking care of myself because I got, renewed, or I got the cup built back up by seeing the family, by eating the supper, by getting out there and throwing the ball or doing that was how I filled my cup back up, and then that's how I took care of the people. The second thing was how I took care of the people by leading by example, by not making them feel like they had to do more than me, because you're not going to outwork me, but I do expect you to, do your job, do it well, get the job done, but I'm not counting the light switches in the office. And I carried that to battalion command. So when I wasn't in the field, when I wasn't doing meetings, and I did every meeting by 12 o'clock when I was a battalion commander. 1 hour training meetings, 1 hour staff, command and staffs, 1 hour meetings. Like I said at the beginning, I'm not that smart. My attention kind of goes away. I got to pee. I got, my mind goes different things, I start daydreaming. I start thinking about other shit. I can't last for more than I can't be in a meeting for 2 hours or 3 hours. I can't do it. So I was like, hey, we do our training. Everything has to happen before 12. Because if you actually study and you actually look at a work day, you probably do about 4 hours. This whole 8 hour work day is bullshit. It is Neolithic. It's old. It's back when they were in the factories. You can do your work, and guess what? You can take your computer and your cell phones home with you. If you want to go home, you got to catch a ball game. You want to catch, your kids practice. You want to coach soccer. When my daughter hit 5 years old, or 4 years old, I can't remember, I took off every Wednesday at 2:00 to go pick her up from school, take her to ballet. Every Wednesday. And I was the division operations officer. I ran Fort Polk as a baby lieutenant colonel. And I literally took off at 2:00 on a Wednesday. Told my secretary, I was like, hey, put it on the calendar, block it off. I'm going to take my daughter to ballet. Did that for a year when, while I was still at Fort Polk. But again, it sets the example that, hey, he prioritizes family. And that's how he fills his cup, by taking care of himself. And that's what we did. And then, so those are the three things. And then how do you take care of your family? You take care of your family by being present. You don't take care of your family by taking off or coming home and being on your cell phone. You don't take care of your family by working all hours of the night. You don't take care of your family by being gone all the time. You take care of your family by being present. And when I mean being present, means being there. And if you can do those three things, not being on your cell phone, not being on, the game system or the TV, but getting out there, throwing the football, riding your bike, running while they're on a scooter, going and lifting weights, how you take care of yourself, then also maintaining that contact with your friends and your families, prioritizing them over all the other bullshit that's outside of it. That's how you take care of those three things: family, people, and yourself. And like I said, I've been through it all. I've made every career mistake you can probably make. But I persevered. I've sucked it up. I haven't felt sorry for myself. Again, my dad was a retired E8 in the Air Force that taught me that NCOs were the backbone of the military. And that's how I was raised. And that's how I led. And those guys in Alaska will tell you. And I wish First Sergeant Statty was on here to back me up or tell me I'm bullshitting. But made some good decisions, some bad decisions, but we continue to kind of get through it and drive on, because again, tomorrow is a new day. It's shenanigans, but the sun does come up tomorrow. It always does. The clock doesn't stop. The clock doesn't stop. Your brain, I tell you, I got a temper that I can't make decisions. I wish First Sergeant Statty on, because I remember telling I was in Iraq and I told our vehicles kept breaking down and we were on this outpost, and I told off. I was a captain and I told off the major because I felt like he wasn't getting our parts to our vehicles fast enough. And I remember running that email, that the message that I sent back to our headquarters, and I had to make sure First Sergeant Statty read it, because I knew I could talk off emotion, and I had to get my senior NCO to kind of be like, you might want to rephrase that. You might want to not. But I ended up sending it anyway and got my ass chewed. And it is what it is. But, I think that's it. But again, leadership is not hard. Leadership is not hard. If you set the example, you lead from the front, and you don't do anything you wouldn't. You don't ask of anything that you wouldn't do personally from your subordinates. And that's something you have to remember, because everybody has. You have to think about it. I didn't really have empathy. I'll tell you right now, I didn't really have empathy until I became a father. I'm just going to be honest with you. I was at work all the time. I was a freaking slave driver. I was I was obviously, I didn't, I wasn't an asshole because I didn't just, I didn't not, I didn't just put out guidance and not follow it through. I would never do that as an officer or a leader, but, I didn't understand the effects of decisions on families until I became a parent. I'm just, being honest, you don't really understand that until you're going through it. I didn't understand the effects of divorce on people until I went through it. And I firmly believe that those things, I firmly believe that I was supposed to be there on that night that Ranger student died. I believe that I was supposed to, based on the career that I've had, I firmly believe that at some point I'm gonna, I have counseled many people on marriage issues. I have counseled many people on, things that, the mental health side of it, of people, maybe not wanting to keep going because I've been there, because life is hard. And the only reason I can say that the sun comes up tomorrow because the sun came up for me, and not a lot of people would admit to it, and you'll never catch on, the what do you call the health assessment?
Yeah.
But life is hard, and everybody goes through shit. Everybody goes through shit, and I think that's what I've told. I told the battalion when I got done commanding it. And they'll tell you, everybody goes through shit. And that's what I told the battalion. Everybody goes through shit. It's how the people to your left and to your right. One thing that we did in the battalion was, you have to do this resiliency training. It's typically, somebody brings it in, some civilian comes in and they do a PowerPoint slide, and you're all sitting in this auditorium, and they're briefing you on, hey, here's the tools, here's the resources, and it's a PowerPoint slide for an hour, and you're going, man, this is freaking bullshit. We've heard it all before. So what we did at the battalion was, I was like, hey, I'm tired of seeing PowerPoints. How do we get after it? So what I told my S3, I told my operations guy, I was like, hey, plan events. And he developed an order for it, and he put people that had been through stuff on different events, team building, where they integrated their examples, their issues that they went through, and if they were comfortable with sharing it. There's all different stations. So you're doing like obstacle courses, you're doing, blindfolded, moving through mazes, you have to talk to each other. You're building stick houses, all these different things that in our chaplain and the senior NCOs and the command sergeant major, all those use their examples of, and we did PT, so we had physical exercises or, different events. And they all used, at the end of each station, you rotated stations, was, hey, why did we do that? Why did you think that? Hey, why did you have to lean on your buddy to get that done? Because you couldn't do it by yourself, right? You can't get through these obstacles by yourself. You're having to lean on somebody else. So we had huge success with that technique over sitting in a PowerPoint presentation for an hour or 2 hours, when it was actually examples of the NCOs, and in the Ranger community, it's very NCO centric. It's very NCO driven. And having the NCOs lead, giving their personal lessons, their personal leadership anecdotes of this was an example of what I had to use and how I got through this stuff, whether it was, a DUI, whether it was drugs, whether it was, marital issues, all those things that we covered in an environment that made them feel comfortable because we were outside, we were doing training, we were using our brain, our muscles, all those different things. And that's kind of what we did, and it was huge success. It was adopted by Fort Benning our overall headquarters, and so on and so forth. But I have talked, I've kept, flat my gums. I feel like, I'm giving a safety brief again to the guys out in the company formation out there in Alaska. But again, everybody goes through shit. Like I tell people, don't do stupid shit. And if you have to question what you're doing, it might not be the right answer. So with that, I'm going to turn it over back for questions of
Yeah, I have a question actually.
Okay.
I have a question and a statement on everything you said about leadership and your style of leadership and just how you lived your career. I think Mo and I can attest that our sergeant major died in he got shot in Afghanistan and he died from the wounds, but that's exactly how he led. And that was my first unit, and I got spoiled. I had the greatest leadership ever in my first unit, and then when I got to my second unit, it was a complete 180. They did not give a fuck about family. It was you're at work until fucking 8 o'clock at night. Whether you're sitting in the bay doing nothing or whether you're sweeping the motor pool for 12 hours straight, you're there. You have no choice. So leadership like that, and that's, I don't care if you want to call us pussies or whatever it is, like the lower, not you, but people, the lower enlisted, for that fucks your mental health up. You're sitting in a warehouse for 12 hours doing nothing where you could be doing other shit, training, exactly what you said, that those other types of resilience trainings and shit. My question though, when you start reaching those higher ranks, I assume your peer group starts to, I guess, fade out a little bit because you're going on different paths and whatnot. So when you're experiencing those new traumatic events like the soldier in the Florida phase, how do you deal with it? How do you process that healthily?
And I tell you, that's a great question. Especially, it was an extremely challenging down here because in a typical brigade, you've got 3 to 4 battalions, right, that are there on the same installation. Here, I'm in Florida. My sister, you got Mountain Phase up in Dahlonega, which is 6 hours away. You got another battalion. You got 2 battalion commanders in Piers in Fort Benning, Georgia, which is 4 hours away. And it very, very, it can be very lonely. Leadership is very lonely at the top. Fortunately for me, with this example, is my replacement was on the ground. The guy we were doing a left seat, right seat ride. He was on the ground with me that week, transitioning of like watching me, how I lead, watching how I command, the decisions I make, because it's a very high risk environment, obviously, down here, especially in the Florida phase with all the different things. And it can be very lonely, but what's funny is he's coming over to help me build the fence, because I get to stay here as I'm transitioning to Pensacola. He's coming over in about an hour and a half to help me build this fence, but we became like brothers that night. Like, you talk about a bond. He bonded with the battalion. He bonded with, he's a great dude. I'm a pretty open book. I'm pretty confident in what I do. So it wasn't like I'm looking over my shoulder or whatever. But that's who I leaned on. When you talk, how I got through it. It was funny because I had multiple generals call me that night to ask me how I was doing. Hey, just want to check in on you. We know you guys are doing the right thing. We have the utmost confidence in you. And but fortunately for me, there was 2 people. It was well, 3 people. It was Rick Jones, the now the commander of the 6th Ranger Training Battalion. It was my command sergeant major, and it was my girlfriend. Those 3 people. That you can't complain down, or you can't like show emotion down, because people pick up on that. Because there was a couple of times where I just want to break down. Like it was a very emotional state. I mean, there was a couple times where I was at the house and I'd start thinking about it, and I'd start crying. Like, I mean, it was, you're by yourself or you're reliving. And when that student in that next day said, "Hey, it's your fault," and I'm there saying, "Hey, yep, it's my fault. It falls on me."
That's furthering your guilt.
Man, you want to talk about, and those three people are who I could talk to about that, of what I was going through inside, because it was hard, to put on come back into work, because we're still in cycle. I still had a job to do, and you're still a professional soldier, with that professionalism. I still had 4 platoons. Really, that platoon got reconstituted, put back in the phase and we had 2 days of counselors and chaplains. We had 80 hours worth of counseling from RIs to the students that they come in and talk to people and things like that, because they saw everything happen,
Yeah.
And for me, though, it was those 3 people. You have to have a network. It wasn't my battalion commanders, now they reached out, but I wasn't close friends with them. They weren't, we weren't. You can only
Personal.
be so close when they're 6 hours or 4 hours away. We're not going to get beer on the weekends. So, it's still a thing, because the new commander that's now the commander, he lives 10 minutes from me. He'll come over. He'll have a glass of whiskey this afternoon. His boys are here visiting, and we're building a fence in the backyard.
Nice.
But you share those experiences. But for me, it was Sergeant Major Lyle, Command Sergeant Major Lyle, who's now an instructor at the Sergeant Major Academy, Rick, and then obviously my girlfriend Shelly. So those 3 people are who I leaned on the most, because it gets very lonely at the top.
So no matter the rank structure, in all reality, a support system is crucial in healing, I think.
No matter what the rank structure, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like you were still individuals, still people. A person, no matter what the rank is, needs a support structure.
Help. They need help. I don't think that's.
I needed help. I needed somebody to talk to. And that's the only way I got through it, was by a sergeant major. I would come in. I'd sit on his couch. We'd talk about it. Like, hey, here's what we're kind of going through. He was a wreck. I was a wreck. But we still had to lead the battalion. And because the RIs were going through it, they were wrecks too.
Yeah.
Kind of going through it. And it meant a lot to me when those NCOs, and you're talking about combat veteran NCOs, no matter if they were from the 82nd, the 101st, the 75th, wherever 10th Mountain, wherever they were from, what meant the most to me, it wasn't at the end of the change of command, it wasn't good job. It was, hey, sir, how you handled that situation is what we're going to remember the most. How you handled, you sticking up for us, leading through it, but I couldn't have gotten through it by myself. I couldn't have done that by myself. No matter what your rank, I don't care if you're a 4-star general, you still got to have a net. You still got to have people that you can call to your left and to your right. I think that's the biggest takeaway, like you were saying. And that, I don't have a large net because I don't like a lot of people.
Quality over quantity.
Quality over quantity. That's a great way to put it. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, that was perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, sir,
that ties into.
Actually, go ahead, Wade. Sorry.
Definitely. Go ahead.
All right. Yeah. So.
I just appreciate your trans.
There's a lag.
Yeah. Take it away, Wade. Take it away.
It's my end. I'm on my. You're good, Mo. Go. Sorry, it's my phone. Can you hear me? All right.
Yep.
I just wanted to say that what your story, not story, but your experiences tie into what our mission statement is. I don't know if you've ever looked at our page, but if you haven't, it's just essentially combat isolation. And coming from somebody who's a hero in a lot of our people's eyes, and I'm sure many more companies that you were in charge of in battalions, it meant a lot to me when you said that you went home and you were kind of alone with your thoughts, cried, because, you know, a lot of us, while we were in the military, we kind of like shamed ourselves for being vulnerable to our emotions. And I just wanted to tell you, as, you know, one man to another, I just appreciated you being transparent and vulnerable with us. That's it. That's all I got.
No, I appreciate that. You know, I'm telling you, like, went through those things to be able to sit here and talk about them, you know, and share my kind of my story of those. And I've been through some, you know, everybody's been through it though, you know. I'm not, you know, special or anything like that. It's just, you know, I've just been put in leadership positions to where, you know, I get the opportunity to provide that insight and that input, you know.
One more now. Go ahead, Mel.
All right, sir. I got a few things for you. I just, as you were talking, I've been typing a few things down just because I squirrel like a motherfucker too. So I feel you. The first thing I kind of wanted to touch on was, and it kind of touches back to when you're talking about MRT, right? The resiliency training. The concept is great. I think it's a great intention, but it's always executed poorly. And I think the main reason why is because the people that they put to instruct MRT, whether it's a civilian or a lot of the times it's some NCO that wants to have a duty that's additional that looks good on their fucking NCOER, so they get another bullet. You know, they don't give a shit. They don't care. Or they might be somewhat passionate about it, but they really suck at public speaking, right? They don't know how to portray some of those important messages. So I think 9 times out of 10, every MRT training I've been in has been absolute trash. And it's only when the people involved actually start having those conversations that it's worth a damn. But half the people won't actually talk because it's a check the block. They don't give a fuck. There's a million other check the block trainings that we get a year. So why pay attention to this? Let's just get out of here, like get through it and get out. And that ties into the concept of suffering in silence, right? That's a huge issue. And just a little background. So Dan and I were both in the same unit. I believe we were in your sister regiment, actually, because you said you were 1-5 when you were in Alaska. We were in 2-5 out at Bliss a little while ago. So we were, so coming from that, we were both 11 Bravo. So that's just a little quick background on where I'm coming from with you, sir. It's that suffer in silence mentality it's been a part of the military, especially combat arms, forever. And then as you get out, you carry on to it, right? That doesn't help with resiliency. That doesn't help with, you know, knowing, like you were saying, that the fucking sun rises every day. That doesn't help with it at all because you end up isolating, right? And the whole point of refit is to combat people from isolating, right? Stop them from isolating. Yeah. And that's part of resiliency is teamwork. And I wanted to actually ask you a question, and I'll give you my take on it first, right? And I wanted to ask you one of the most, like, what to you, from what you've seen in your experiences, what's the most important quality for a soldier to have and take away with them when they transition out of the military? To me, it's teamwork, because we're very good. Like you were saying, your NCOs, when that incident happened, your NCOs got together. They were all on the ball. You were able to manage expectations, keep the focus instead of letting everyone kind of hyper focus on something else, right? That teamwork piece we thrive in when we're in, and we love it because we're constantly in that day to day, and that's the drive. Those are the kind of people that you deal with, especially in combat arms, but every other MOS especially. I mean, we forget that shit when we get out, right? We live it, we breathe it when we're in, but the moment you get out, you'll see people isolating immediately. They don't want to talk to people about it. They don't want to open up with some of the shit they might be going through because they think it might make them weak. They're in different environments around different people, and they have different expectations, and they're holding people in their normal life in the civilian side unconsciously. I think a lot of the times we hold them to that standard that we would hold our buddies to, right? If you're deploying.
Yeah.
And that's not realistic, and it's not fair to them. But we forget that the teamwork aspect was so paramount to getting over those hard times, you know? And like you said, at the top, it's lonely at the top, but you had a support system, you know? Getting out, people forget how to do that. And that's a lot of what we see. So the question again that I was asking is, what's the most important quality that you think transfers, whether it's a NCO officer or just, you know, like your regular Joes or Janes? What do they carry over to the civilian world from their military experiences that benefits them most?
Well, I mean, I think you kind of hit it on the head. You know, I ask everybody that gets out of the Army, and I've done it my entire career. I've always asked, hey, what's your plan? You know, it's not to talk you back in, not to get you to re-enlist. It's, you tell me what your plan before I, you know, if I'm signing off on this, what is your plan? And that's school, work, family, those three things of what's gonna happen. But those are the three questions that I ask, you know. And the only thing that gives me pause is when somebody says, well, I don't know what, then I'm like, then I start to dig. Then I'm like, oh, okay, so you're going to get out of the Army. Where are you going to move to? All right, you're going to, you know, I'm going to go be a fireman. I'm going to go be a policeman. Okay, have you talked to the police force? Have you talked to the fire department? Do you have a, okay, you're going to go to school. Okay, so what school are you going to go to? You know, you said teamwork, and I wholeheartedly agree. But the biggest thing that I want, and I don't know if the word quality is the right word for it, is some type of plan of action. Like that's the biggest thing I want somebody to know and to understand, is to have a plan. But the teamwork aspect, I think, is part of that plan when they transition out. I mean, 120%, I believe that there's got to be a network, and I think that's the great thing about Project Refit, is kind of getting those guys out, connecting through social media or whatever, because that's the only reason I have Facebook, is to talk to those former soldiers, the former teammates that have, you know, you go throughout your career, because it's very easy to forget those, to lose track of those in today's environment where, you know, you're moving to Florida, you're moving to Ohio, you're moving to, you know, New York or wherever. Like I said, I haven't talked to, you know, First Sergeant Staddy since I probably left Iraq, like, you know, and he was my closest guy. That's kind of on us, you know, but as career and life kind of gets a vote as we go through it. But the most important thing that I ask people to have is a plan. But I think the team is part of that plan. Job, family, career, school, team. those four, or however many things, you know, I was never very good at math, but those go into a plan. That's what I think is the most important for anybody. And that's something I've always asked somebody that's getting out of the Army. What is your plan? Do you have a plan? I'll sign the paperwork right now. You know, well, I've been accepted into this, and I'm moving here. The wife was already looking at jobs. She has a job interview here. The kids are going to go here. Because I'm going to get into the details of your plan. You know, so you better come to me prepared and not half-ass when you get out. So that, to me, but I think the team and the teamwork is part of that plan. How are you going to stay connected to your team? You know, how are you going to stay connected to the people that you need the most? Because I think what happens to a lot of people, because it happens to us when we PCS to another duty assignment. We get sucked into the present or the future, and we forget the past of the people that got us to that point, that got us through those hard times. And we may not want to bother other people. We may not want to, you know, because they got their own shit they're going through. You might, you know, and you might feel guilty about, doing it, but it's that reemphasize and that staying connected. I think that's part of the how. I talk about, when you talk, you look at my philosophy on things. There's in the philosophy of how Ranger School was, but there's a how and there's a why, and I give you the why and you give me the how. How we're going to do it is the why as a commander, give me as a subordinate the how you're going to accomplish that mission. Because I'm not going to tell you how to do it. I'm not going to tell you, A to Z. I'm not going to get in your ass. I'm not that kind of a leader. But I am going to ask what that plan is. And again, I think the plan, one aspect of it is the team. And I think that kind of goes into that whole network and system. I think that's what I would say. And that's how I would say when you ask the most important quality as a guy gets out, the most important thing they have to do is plan. And I think the team that they have and how to maintain contact or how to get in contact is part of that plan of action in getting out of the Army. But I wholeheartedly think your teamwork, but I think team is part of it, part of the whole spectrum. As guys
that's a good point. I mean, having it, and that's something we tell people sometimes here is like, what's your mission, right? You need a mission to go forward, because we're very mission oriented, and you get out and you got to do all this life on your own, right?
Yeah.
Nobody's making your medical appointments for you. No one's chewing you out for it. Nothing. So absolutely, I agree. Having a mission in mind, a direction to go to, that plan of action, that is paramount.
Well, exactly. I think that direction is what guys have to transition that. And I think one of the best things people can do is create that plan, but then use the stuff you learned, transition that to making that into doing the next. You talk about like doing MDMP and all this other crap, to plan something, but you can apply those things in anything you do. I had, another mentor of mine tell me, everything you do, you got to plan for it. And that's the only way you got to plan for help. I plan to go to the grocery store. I got to write down a list. I got everything that I'm just kind of anal, I guess, that way that, ADD or whatever, but I'm going to forget it halfway there. I'm going to forget what I was freaking supposed to be, the purpose of what I was doing. But you got to find that purpose, but you got to have a plan to accomplish it. Otherwise, if you don't lay it out and the steps you're going to go through to do it, you're not going to maintain azimuth. You're not going to maintain course, because you can get rerouted different ways.
Back on what you said earlier about the like when we get out and we lose whether it's the ability, the drive to stay in contact with our people, and we're always, I do it. I think every single fucking veteran does it. You get self-conscious. I don't want to impede in their life. I don't know what they got going on.
Yeah.
But every fucking time we've had this conversation, what is it? I miss talking to my dudes. Every single person says it. So if we all feel that way, you're not impeding on anyone's life. We're waiting for each other. Now it's a fucked up mechanism. Obviously, I'm waiting for you. You're waiting for me. We're both we both may be unhealthy, but I think that's a stigma that has not been recognized yet. In just being a veteran, just that. I think that because you talk about it right when you're getting out, right when you're transitioning out, it's oh fuck, dude. Whatever his name was, got out 6 months ago. We haven't heard from him. We talk all day, every single day. I know that's going to happen. So I think we have to start veering away from that. And if you want to keep those contacts, do it. It's not you're not a nuisance. You were a part of that person's life for X amount of years, 5 fucking years. They want you in their life.
Yeah.
And I think that forces a lot of the isolation because you're not going to reach out to your dudes. You don't want to fucking bother them. So then you're gonna repress. And all that shit's going to ferment and it's going to build, and then you have a support system. You're just not using it.
Yeah, 100%. Love it.
It's a weird perception that we carry. Like if life is a 5 mile run, you know what I mean? It's obviously a lot longer than 5 miles. But if you fall out of the run and somebody's got to come back and police you up, you look like a shitbag. I mean, we got to be honest here. So it's almost like a Blue Falcon mentality if you need help. And I mean, it is shitty, but I mean, alphas suck at asking for help, and alphas usually
fake
aren't used to
alphas.
being
Let's
the ones
not remember we had this
Right.
conversation. We had this conversation.
Fake alpha.
Yes.
You're right. But you know, I think all of us coming into the military have some sort of dream of being that super alpha, and so when we got to ask for help, we got to swallow our pride, and sometimes pride is the only thing you have left, man. That's probably what it is. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just giving a maybe.
It's a way of thinking, though. I agree with you 100%. It's you've lost everything else. You have no happiness. The negative emotions may not even be there anymore. I went years. I felt nothing. I was just in that limbo area, and pride or arrogance, whatever negative trait you want to stick to, they become an unhealthy vice. In no way, I don't really see pride being I mean, never mind. I'll take that back. But in the mental health world with PTSD and the anxiety and depression and all that stuff, it's a very, very dangerous path to go down, because once you start entertaining that pride, you're going to start convincing yourself of the negative thoughts that you keep inside your head. So yeah, I don't think that's the way to go.
So, sir, I kind of wanted to touch up on a few things. And is one, going off of what they were talking about with the pride. I think one way to push that out of people's system is something like this, right? You came on, you were a leader for a bunch of folks in here, and a lot of folks that aren't. But in general, you were in a position of authority, and you didn't just shitbag it, right? And there's a lot of people who have those positions. There's a lot of folks out there. Some of y'all might be in this, some of y'all might be watching it, or wherever it goes. When we're dealing with communities like this, it goes a long, long way for the folks who look up to those kind of people, right? Who are beneath, who are your subordinates, if you want to use that word. It goes a long way for them to see you opening up on some of these pieces, right? And I'm pretty sure, like, some of the dudes in this call that served with you in Alaska, it's probably really, really important and beneficial for them to hear you talk about the things that you talked about, to open up with those pieces. Obviously, there's a time and place for it, because when you're in that leadership role, you have to stay focused, and you need to execute the mission and keep people on track. But then after the fact, maybe during the AARs or offline, when you can have a more informal setting, kind of putting yourself out there goes a long way for the folks. Yeah. It goes a really long way, and that helps people who are being too prideful, who think like, nah, fucking, like, that shit's weakness, I'm gonna ignore this, when they see somebody that they look up to or in a leadership position that's like, hey, I mean, this shit happens, this is normal, this is to be expected, this is part of life, you know, have these conversations, attack it this way, have your mission, you know, use that buddy system. They tend to like hesitate for a second and think about it more. They might not execute on it right away. They might need that rude awakening at some point, but it generates those thoughts in their mind in that one moment when they have that fucking, you know, crazy life experience that just snaps them out of it. They'll go forward. They're going to think back on these experiences and these moments. That goes a long way.
We've had that conversation along with fuck, I lost it. Never mind. Go. Son of a bitch.
All right. So this gets me to another question I have for you. So sorry to put you on the fucking spot with questions, sir, but deal with it. All right. I was a grimy ass NCO, so I'm gonna treat you like an officer. How did you deal with problem soldiers, right? With soldiers who were, whether it was they were just seemingly shitbags, or they were just dealing with so much that they were overwhelmed and it was starting to impact their soldiering shit, you know, or their life. What was your way of dealing with that? You know, because I think a lot of that can tie into us interacting with each other, you know, in the real world when we're trying to look out for our buddies and shit. It's like when we see somebody down that's kind of shitbagging it, not responding or slacking or whatever, like, it's a good way to approach that shit.
Okay. All right. So the first part of your comments there was talking about the opening up and kind of setting an example. So when we did that resiliency training, the battalions in formation, I break them down and I bring them in And the first thing I did was I told him my story. I told him what I was going through personally, or what I had gone through and what I was continuing to go through with the family stuff that I was going through. And I was having to deal with it in, pretty much the entirety of, my command. But I told him, I was like, hey, you're not, even from the guy standing in front of you, facing you, this is why we're doing it. But also, you're not the only ones dealing with shit, And I told him right there, I kind of told the battalion, because nobody had known at that point of what I had gone through. And it was really the entirety of the first year of my command. The first year of my command, I was going through this stuff. And so I just opened up and told him, like, hey, this is what happens, and this is what I was going through. The second part, your question though was, how did you deal with the problem soldiers under me? I'm not a UCMJ guy. I'll lead off with that, unless it's I don't, I'll tell you, there's a couple things I don't like, and I won't, there's the drugs and like DUIs and things like that. I won't. It's just I just won't tend to budge on it. Especially if I had one guy that got drunk, hit other cars and things like that. And just something I won't. There's no gray area with me on that one. That or drugs, marijuana, and things like that. When they make decisions in those kind of things. But the first thing, and there's different levels of problem soldiers, different levels of it. Whether it's soldiers having issues, soldiers, whether it's the minor stuff like not showing up on time, or it's major stuff where they're having severe problems. But how I dealt with it first, and kind of going from the command perspective, I would let their first line supervisor handle it, obviously, and it was as it kind of worked up its way. That's how I would deal with it, just at least on that, in the structure wise, how I would go with it. But the first answer wasn't UCMJ. The first question that I would ask my company commanders is, okay, so, if the soldier's having problems, or, how well do you know, the first thing I'd ask is, how well do you know your soldier, number one. But then what steps could have prevented the incident, whether it's, not showing up for appointments, whether it's, guys getting in trouble, getting in a fight downtown, that kind of thing. I'd have to get the background for it before making an informed decision on it. I'd have 20 questions, I'd have so many questions to just dive into how we got here. Why is this guy standing in? Why are we at the point that this guy is standing in my office? Where we, but then there were several times. I remember one soldier in Alaska, and I don't know if I might have, I was a young captain, so I don't know if I had the experience or patience. But back then in 2006, 2007, I don't know if you guys remember, but huffing canned air was a big thing. Huffing canned air was a huge thing back in those. It might still be. We didn't have any problems, But
it's still around, but it's not like, I know what you mean. Yeah, it was like an epidemic then.
I mean, so I had this one soldier that, and I'll tell you, it's probably I would probably get fired if I did this now. If I said these things now. But he passed out in the PX bathroom. He passed out in a ditch. You know who this is. He passed out in a ditch in the middle of the Alaska winter from huffing canned air. I mean, he went through, all the different treatments and all those different things, and he still kept doing it. And he eventually got kicked out of the Army for it. But I can still remember, and he came in my office one day and he was asking for forgiveness. And, that's not probably how the way to handle it. But I was like, dude, stop, because you're gonna kill yourself. And he, I essentially told him, hey, just stop, or you're done. Like you're don't come to me one more time. And it's something I've always looked back on. I mean, he's out of the Army and things like that, but I didn't handle that probably the right way, because I was just tired of the fourth or fifth time with the canned air, because he wasn't improving.
Mm-hmm.
But the first thing I'm going to ask is how did we get to this point? Go circling, kind of going back to that. But for me, UCMJ isn't the first thing. Problem soldier. There's a story to everybody. There's a story to everybody, and I was kind of raised not to make excuses and things like that. But there's a story. But I'm also, when you look at from a leadership perspective, are they hurting the rest of the unit? When I looked at how I made things like that, I'm not a mass punishment guy, but there's a couple times I can tell you when we had guys in Alaska get DUIs. We didn't have one for almost 2 years. We may have had one DUI in 2 years, and it's pretty incredible for an infantry company.
Yeah.
And then we right before deployment, we had like 2 or 3. And Saturday night, I brought the entire battalion in to the barracks. I think we may have one on a Friday night, and I brought the battalion in, the company in. I had a breathalyzer, and I had a case of beer. And I don't know what the beer was. I don't know if it was light beer. I don't know if it was whatever. So I took the beer, and Will, I don't know if you remember this, but I took the beer and I started drinking it myself. And then I took the breathalyzer, and I thought, okay, 2 beers, 3 beers. I blow like a 0.03 or something like that. Completely missed the point of the effects of beer on breathalyzer and what constitutes actual being drunk. And, I was like, well, this didn't work out the way I had planned on. But again, how I dealt with problem soldiers, I asked the question, what got you to this point? And it's kind of a broad brush, because there's so many different examples of problem soldiers, whether it's through family problems, whether it's through, but again, I don't fudge on the DUIs, and I don't fudge on guys, taking drugs. It's just the two areas. Now I will understand, we'll get people to help that led them to, getting in those things, but I also believe in second chances. I also believe in an example of that would be, I had an NCO, awesome NCO, get a BUI, a boating under the influence. And he was done.
It's a party time.
Yeah, the thing is, like in Florida, he was drinking, having a good time. There was a boat police officer watching him. Guy got on the jet ski, then went, and then he, used it like a target opportunity outside a bar. And he got, listed, got taken off to promotion from, I guess, E6 to E7. And I looked at him, I was like, hey, here's your opportunity. He got flagged, got put in his permanent file. And I told him, I was like, hey, because I knew he was worth it. And I was like, hey, you bust your ass, you can work your way back. He busted his ass. He worked his way back. I had to write a special letter to the brigade commander and then the 2-star general and said, hey, this guy's worth it. He got it removed. He's now at E7 going on E8, and he's doing awesome. We got another guy that's doing that got a DUI. that's kind of trying to work his way back. But the first thing is how I dealt with it is ask the question of how we got here. That's a long way to get to that, and then once you figure out the root of the problem, you can fix the problem. But every instance is unique and different. Everybody should do and has to do is ask the question black and white. How you administer the fix or how you administer the way ahead. It all depends on what type of person they are, what type of soldier they are, their performance, and if they're, which way they're going to go. So, I guess that's a long answer to that.
Hey, so if I can, for about 30 seconds, to steal your soapbox, sir, if that's no problem.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So first, I want to thank you for coming in here, Colonel Pritchett. Like, you have been such an inspiration, not just to the Ranger Battalion, but like when you're a company commander, like we created a tab, like legit guys, everyone looking in here, we know bullshit, created our own fucking tab. It is a fucking Pritchett tab, and we wore it in Alaska, and no one could take our fucking tab out. Alpha Company 115. Like, we had a fucking Pritchett tab because that's how badass fucking Commander Pritchett is. Like, when they wrote the Ranger fucking handbook, it was like pre-ejaculated from Jesus that James fucking Pritchett was gonna fucking be here because that's what the fucking Ranger handbook was written after. This man is such an inspiration to so many soldiers, so many people. Like, we like legit wore a tab on our shoulder. Under, there'd be guys that have a Ranger tab, and under that Ranger tab would be a fucking Pritchett tab. No bullshit. Like, sir, you have inspired and
I have seen that
enthusiasm. Like, you are one of the reasons. You and Colonel Kelly are legit one of the reasons I'm still alive. 1 year ago, 1 year ago, doctors told me I wouldn't be alive. I was 402 pounds. You and Colonel Kelly inspired me to just say, I'm like, I got my Pritchett tab, man. What would Pritchett do? Like we used to joke in the CP and shit. We'd be like, we'd say, what would Pritchett do? Like, we almost even made a what would Pritchett do tab. Like
WWPD.
Exactly. Like, when we were thinking of doing stupid shit, like, what would fucking Pritchett do? Like, when we decide to give up, what would fucking Pritchett do? That's how much inspiration you have on so much people, sir. Like life's hard, and we go through some fucked up shit. Like, I just, and this is hard. I haven't even told my wife, but and I'm going to a PTSD TBI treatment facility, and it's called the Raleigh House here in Colorado, and it's a hard step for me, and my wife is so proud that I came up with it before her, but due to all the traumatic brain injury I have some symptoms that are almost like dementia, and they say it will never get healed, but they also said I'd be dead today, right? James,
yeah,
what, were you not there? And Colonel Pritchett, I know I kept calling you Captain Pritchett 1 year ago, fucking right? I was like, doctor saying I'm not going to make it. I completed a Spartan 10K fucking with Project Refit with this badass group. Colonel Pritchett, you were fucking there on that day where I was in my fucking lowest. And now they're telling me that I got this shit that, like, eating away at my brain. Like, I won't remember shit. And it has happened, but fuck that shit, bro. You know why? Because I got my Pritchett tab. No, sir. I just wanted, I've been hearing you, and you have high points in this conversation and low points, but I just want you to know, sir, that not just through Ranger Battalion, but like, when you were with 1-5, like, you inspired. Like, when I was telling people, hey, Colonel Pritchett's gonna be on this, they're like, Colonel Pritchett, you mean Captain Pritchett? I'm like, yeah, I know. We all think of him as Captain Pritchett, and it's hard to, like. We don't want to take away from the where you're at now, the Colonel Pritchett, but we all always look at you as our company commander because, bro, that's where you're at. Like, you inspired it. And even Statty was like, oh, Pritchett's going to be there. I'm coming in. Like, Statty was so inspired the fact that you were going to be here. Like, you inspire so many people in and out of the military now. Like,
Actually,
and it's hard. Like you reach that stage of inspiration. Like I get messages and like, Sergeant Will, you did this for me, you did that for me, but you have your own personal life struggles as well. And it's like, how do I maintain this? Oh, I don't even know how to put it, but where people look up to you and talk to you and look for you advice, but it's like, bro, I'm trying to handle my own fucking shit right now, right? Like, have you been there, sir?
Oh yeah. I mean, oh yeah.
I actually just I would like to jump in, and I haven't said anything yet because I'm going to be honest with you, man. Like, so I'm the only civilian in here. I'm one of the co-founders of this, and I'm beyond honored to meet people like you. All right. And I'm not saying that for anything other than it's your story. It's genuinely your leadership, and it's your example that I hope that I can bring on into my own life regarding even like being a civilian and leading even an organization that we're leading right now to actual victory or actual success. And learning from you, even in this small moment, is incredible. And I am by far understanding now why everybody looks up to you the way they do. It's actually unbelievable to hear a leader with your caliber to be able to say the one thing that stuck out to me out of all of it, which honestly all of it was incredible, but the one thing that stuck out to me was you saying flat out, you know what I did? I went back and I cried. And you're still alpha as fuck, by the way. And you opened up and you said that. By the way, that's leadership in my eyes. And my mom told me years ago, and I said this last week, my mom said years ago to me, a true alpha looks out for his own or her own and also knows how to be emotional at the same time and still hold that leadership role. My mom told me that shit years ago. And you, by far, my mom, if she ever listens to this, I'm going to show her this interview. She's going to be like, that's the alpha. That's what you want to be. That's who you want to follow. And I'll tell you what, man, I'm beyond honored to have you on here. And I'm sure everybody else agrees with that because it's astounding. It's astounding. I mean, you might not recognize it at all, but I'm going to tell you right now, man, like this interview, it will be shared. It will be clipped out. I hope you're okay with that because the shit that you're sharing right now is real. It's raw and it's vulnerable, by the way. And that means it's true leadership. And I'm blown away, and I'm so fucking honored right now. It's unbelievable. So thank you,
sir. I got two things for you. So prepare to copy. One,
I'm writing this shit down.
I'm gonna try to, in case all that smoke and blowing up your ass is like elevated you too high, I'm gonna bring you back down.
Let's go.
Bring you back down. So I want to know. You got almost 3 hat tricks under your belt. What is that comes to your mind? What is one of your funniest no shit there I was deployment stories? And then 2, because the whole point of this is once that's done, and I know you're gonna have to go soon to build that fence. So before you go, 1, that no shit there I was. 2, when was the moment where you really realized that you were for your life? Right, to kind of stick with the theme of the podcast, for my life. When was that moment for you, if you're willing to share it?
Okay. So, funniest no shit moments during a deployment. Okay, so here's a story that this was even before. This was as a I was either a lieutenant or a baby captain. I'm in Afghanistan. I'm walking through, and this was 2003. This was Operation Winter Strike in 2003. I had already left the 10th Mountain. I literally left them in Afghanistan, went to, back then it was called ROPE. Now I think it's called RASP or something. By October, I was back in Afghanistan driving by my previous unit that was still there with 175. We're in this was before like the outpost of Asadabad and Jaybad and all these other built up, structures were out there. We were in Toyota Hiluxes driving out to the middle of nowhere on the eastern side of Afghanistan before any units had been there. I mean, this is October, November 2003. And we're walking through a city and or village or whatever, and a car I don't remember this, but I've heard this story several times, and I know people will get a kick out of it. There was a car going down a road or whatever, and we're on a foot patrol. We're on dismounted patrol. And we're moving through the city or whatever and doing whatever. I can't remember what we were doing. It was at night or early morning, and a car runs over a bottle. The bottle pops off the cap, hits me in the neck, and I go, I'm it. The next day, I'm awarded a Purple Heart. There's a full ceremony.
Oh, shit.
All because of a bottle cap. And I don't remember this, but the story is told by every member of that platoon from 7.5 of Pritchett earning a Purple Heart with a bottle cap on that deployment in Afghanistan. I was hit, I was struck, and I got my Purple Heart from a bottle cap.
Very nice.
So the lesson learned here is that you need to recycle in Afghanistan.
I'm still like, oh my God, I can't believe that would happen. And I'm sure that's the kind of the one that I keep getting reminded of every time somebody like reaches out, hey sir, like, yeah, that was me.
I know. I was there.
You hear about the lieutenant stories.
Yeah.
Lieutenant story.
That's an amazing lieutenant story.
As a young platoon leader, and I got through it and things like that, but dumb lieutenant, get hit by a bottle cap, and that one kind of sticks out, as the most. And there's other stuff, but that one was kind of when you talk about laughing at yourself. That's that kind of sticks out the most. The second part of that was when you talk for my life, for your life. I'll tell you, going through. My dad was a huge influence on my life, and it was a huge influence on the company that these guys are talking about. Every life lesson, every kind of thing I did, and everything I try to teach and instill in those guys in that company was from my dad. So to lose him, he had a stroke. They cut the stroke. The blood had cancer cells in it, and it went into his brain, and ended up dying from brain cancer. You're really just crazy. He was 74 years old. Still had a lot of life to live from that. But to lose him right as I was never been to a promotion, never been to a change of command, never saw me kind of lead because they were in Arkansas where we were from. But to have that moment, that was of losing probably the man that I respected the most in this entire universe, and to lose him right as I was coming into, kind of my own as a senior leader in the Army was a big deal, and something that I've had to kind of relook at, what are my priorities, and I've already spoken a little bit about the divorce and things like that, but that when you talk about for your life, and for your kids. I made a decision. I could have gone to CENTCOM. I could have gone to the Pentagon after this last command, and I chose to stay in Florida to be close to the kids. So when you look at, for your life, it's, for me, it's for my life and for their life. That was kind of those moments, the passing of my dad, the divorce, but kind of going through with the support net, the same people that were there on that night when we lost that student were the same people, the only people I really consoled with when I went through the divorce. But that moment of picking yourself up, leaning on your teammates, those two moments are what come back to me. The loss of the father when I was in the hardest job that I've ever been in, working for, Major General Frank, who's the chief of staff of the CENTCOM now. And he was just you just work. When you're in those jobs, you just work. That's the expectation. And then you lose a father in the middle of it. And then when you take command and go through divorce as a battalion commander, you have to realize who your people are around you, who your friends are, who you can talk to, and who you want to be as a leader, a person, a dad. And that's what kind of kept me, pushing on. There's other people that I'm responsible for. There's a whole unit I'm responsible for. There's kids that I'm responsible for, and there's friends that I'm kind of responsible for. So those two instances were my kind of for my life, of what I try to be and what I try to instill to set the example for others to follow, I guess, if that makes sense. So I hope I answered that question.
Honestly,
well.
I don't think you could have answered any better, man. That was incredible. So listen, I'm going to wrap this thing up for everybody. I think you got to get back to your fence. We have to get back to driving. And honestly, this has truly been an honor. I'm not blowing smoke up your ass. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. And I'm sure everybody else does. And
100%.
Vulnerability, the leadership, the everything. I hope to one day lead like you, like genuinely. And so thank you, everyone, for coming on to FML. Again, usually means fuck my life. Of course, here it means for my life, because that's the most important thing. You got to be for it. You got to find those people, lead your family in the right direction. That's something I got out of this too, is you got to lead your family first. And then, from there, everything else will follow. So really appreciate you. Thank you for coming on. Everybody else, thank you for tuning in, of course. Any questions you may have for us, you can send them privately. You ever want to talk to us, send them privately. Join our radio check, whatever it may be. We're literally here all the time, and we're ready to help you out, get you resources you need, or just listen to you. Or if you need somebody to go camping with you one weekend, we'll drive our asses out to you. So this is how we do it, and this is how we do it. We show up. So thank you, everyone.